Hey everybody, today we have Nimo Gandhi, a professional working actor with a ton of film and television credits to his name. You got to see his reel. It's amazing. It's also hilarious. He's been in Blacklist, Unbreakable, Kimmy Schmidt, Law and Order, SVU, Sharknado 2, and a ton of other stuff. And Nimo also writes, he does voiceover work, and he's a singer and songwriter. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Martin. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I wanted to just kind of start out by giving us a little bit of background on what you do. Like, how did you get into acting, and where are you now? And you just told me about an awesome thing that you're very excited about. So I'd love you to talk about that too.
Awesome. Yeah. So I came out to the East Coast from Indiana. I grew up in Indiana. And so my parents are from India. They came to Indiana. It's just kind of worked out that way. And so I went to engineering school, and then one of my close friends from college, when I would visit him in New York, he lived in Jersey. He's like, I think you could be a great salesperson. So he found out that there was an opportunity. I came out, I interviewed for it, and I got the job. And so I moved to near Parsippany, New Jersey, and basically I was in my 20s, and about 9 months into the job, I was going to get fired, and I hadn't realized it. So because I was, from my vantage point, I was learning the technology and how to sell at the same time. And I was in this new culture of Jersey, and, there's the city and spending time, going out, and it wasn't working out. And so, the VP of sales for that company, who I didn't really have a lot of interaction with, came to me and he said, I'd like to meet with you for a few minutes at the end of the day. And during that time, I didn't have a manager. He had left the company, so I was kind of out on my own. And so we sat down for the meeting, and very clearly early on, it became, I don't think it's working out kind of thing. So, and I had up and left, Indiana, and, it was quite shocking. So, in that meeting, I said, I understand what you're saying. He said, you're kind of shy and a little awkward in meetings, and I just don't know that this is for you. And I said, listen, I'm learning two things at once. And honestly, like, you haven't really seen what I do on a day-to-day basis. And so we kept talking, and I sort of started a fight for staying here.
You were selling.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And he said, he looked at his watch. He's like, I expected this to be, 10 minutes tops. And now we're here like 45 minutes, and you still got me seated here talking with you. So, clearly you can sell yourself, but, and I'm thinking about it, and you know what? I want to give you a chance to prove yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you 9 months, and I want you to do me a favor. When I was at Drexel University, I went to engineering school, and I was part of the theater program there. And I always felt like improv and theater helped me as a salesperson. And I want you to do me a favor. The city's not too far. I want you to sign up for an acting class.
Interesting.
So every Thursday night I would come to 6th Avenue in the city, and I did this acting class. What I remember is we were crawling around like animals and like trying to find our physicality in our body. Very odd experience, but there was something about it I really connected with. And so the teacher there happened to run an off Broadway situation, and I would go there and I would train with her, and I became part of that ensemble, and it opened up a door for me. And so I just got more and more into it. I used to run the lighting and sound for that little theater on the weekends, and I would perform in some like small roles in a production that she was putting up. And that's how I got into acting. I continued working as a salesperson. To this day, I still do some consulting. But that was like my access point to acting. And for years, I didn't even take myself seriously enough to consider film and television until I went to William Esper's studio at the recommendation of a friend. And when I worked with Terry Knickerbocker there, he was my teacher for 2 years. And that kind of formalized that I really want to do this, And so that was basically theater-based acting training. And then I started to do student films as I was finishing that up. And then just from there, I started to get some of the work that you mentioned on my resume. And you know, I've continued to love it from there.
Nice. So let's hear about your thing. You just found out yesterday, right?
Oh, yeah. So along the way, I started to do, so I had this training at William Esper Studio. Terry Knickerbocker, who's just phenomenal acting teacher. And afterwards I was doing student films, but I was also learning how to commercially act. They have a resource center in town called Actors Connection. And I would go there and take like these commercial classes. And it was really, really torturous because it wasn't really about the lines, which is what I learned in acting school was language-based acting, theater. But, you know, what became clear very early on is that commercial, even film and TV, it's a visual medium. And so I really struggled a lot. I kept working at it. And then this agency, Phil, over at Stewart Talent, decided to pick me up and start working together. And they started to send me out. And so I started booking commercials. And I just found out yesterday I booked a major national commercial. I'm flying to Los Angeles. They've not told me the name of the company. They've only referred to it at the, there's a casting office called Beth Melsky, and they cast a lot of major productions, and they've just had a code word for it. I'm not even going to get a script when I go out there. I auditioned with the director over Skype, and it was a 45-minute audition, which has never happened. I did 6 scenes improvisationally. I just followed his direction. And I found out yesterday they whittled it down to a few of us. I was the only New York actor to be asked back, and it was me and several LA actors, and I got the role. It's like a lead kind of, I've never had a lead in a commercial. I still don't know the name. So it's exciting. I go to LA for 5-6 days, actually. This week.
Awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's super exciting. It's something that a lot of actors are like, you know, it's like a huge goal.
Yeah.
This one guy that I used to hang out with a lot, he had told me like how he booked a national commercial. I mean, he hasn't done a ton of other projects. He got like very lucky with that one, but he was like so excited. It kind of like the money like sort of changed his life. And it's so, you know, when you do something like that, it's so it's really, really awesome. And I feel like if you use those connections properly and you stay in touch and, you know, you do the best possible work, it can lead to other things.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
the exposure. The exposure is incredible. People just come up to you, or casting directors recognize, because you may not be in their mind, and then they're watching television and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't called that guy or girl in a while. Let me do that. They're clearly working. So yeah, the exposure is a really great thing.
Well, I have a few questions. I wrote some questions down while you were talking. I had a first question though. So I want to kind of turn the clock back a tiny bit, because a lot of actors who might be listening or watching this are sort of like, you know, they haven't booked anything major yet. And it's the belief of a lot of actors that you sort of have to start by performing in theater and then start to move into screen acting. So my question to you is, you have a ton of screen credits at this point that you've built up. How much experience do you actually have in theater first? Like, have you done a lot of theater production? No. And how did you kind of get into screen acting without spending a long time doing theater? Because some actors just kind of feel like, oh, I have to spend, even if they want to do screen, they think that they can't.
Yeah. So it's a great question. Man, I've learned a lot in the last couple of years, just now being able to look back to answer the question, which is, I just thought, my friend who recommended William Esper Studio, I'm like, I should definitely do that. It's the first year is about sort of they're working you on having potential access to your emotions, you know, in order to play in that training, the variety of characters you may play, you've got to be able to have access to the wide range, hopefully, of different emotions. So the first year, and this is my second career. So what I realized in the first year is that I had tucked away a lot of issues, and so Terry's job, what I felt in the first year of a 2-year program, is to kind of break me down, because I had put things in the closet, and you're confronted with, in this format, which I still refer to it as a theater-based format, because I don't think people listening to, as actors that have had any kind of training, this would be foreign to them to be able to evoke different emotions through the different training tactics and then the different scene work. I mean, you're really, because the ultimate goal in all of the mediums is to bring yourself to the role. And so that's a common thing, I think, between theater and film and TV and even commercial. So the first year was break me down. And then the second year was be able to use that sort of new access to build characters. Now, it's all tied very much to the language of the playwright. The playwright's language is the thing that is honored. It is what you focus on because it's a language-based medium. In hindsight, I am happy I met Terry and William Esper and had that first year because I was a different guy working in technology and being a numbers-driven guy and results-oriented, and in some aspects, not so compassionate. So the work I had to do with him had to open some things up for me to have a chance to be an actor, an artist. But in hindsight, Martin, to answer your question, there's such a chasm between film acting and theater acting. And the chasm is we're telling a visual story. And it's not really about the lines. It's in commercial and film and TV, it's about the life. And so I think, I can't speak for other people's experiences, but I know now, looking back 12 years, that though that training at William Esper and theater training served me, what's serving me more now is an understanding of the camera and what I'm doing as a storyteller to honor really the writing, certainly, but also the direction. And not be so concerned about the language being the driving force. It's really, what am I focused on in the relationship, and how am I telling? The auditioning is so challenging because you're doing all of that. It's just you and the camera and the reader, and you have to create that world and also an authenticity visually.
Yeah, there's I personally am not an actor, but I've been a headshot photographer for now like 10 years. And,
yeah.
When you're on camera, it's like there's such subtle things that happen on your face that give away the internal story of what's going on there. And I think, a lot of actors, especially ones who've had a lot of theater training, kind of feel the need to make things bigger just to get the message across to a big audience. But in camera, it's happening inside. Think if you're alone in a room and you're feeling something and something's going on in your life, you're not going to be acting out in any way.
Right.
It's all going to be internal, but those tiny little, tweaks of the eyes and stuff, that the camera picks up all of that.
To this day, the greatest challenge I have is that I still bring my feelings to certain moments, certain scenes, just like what you're if you were taking my pictures, you would probably be saying, hey, dude, just bring yourself. You don't have to bring the emotions of what, you don't have to generate emotions or feelings. It's really about everything is driven by what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so, that's how I'm connecting to what it's interesting you mentioned taking photos, because I think it is very similar. It's driven by what you're doing, I'm learning, and not some self-generated feeling.
Yeah, it's you're not trying to make the emotion. It's what is happening and how are you naturally just reacting to it?
Yes, yeah.
When you're unconsciously,
Yes, yeah, 100%.
I would like to actually kind of go into a little bit of detail now, because we've talked about a very important difference, which is the difference between that very subtle acting for film versus theater. Now, In terms of actually like the marketing side or the career and moving your career forward, my first like quick question is, what was the first thing that you ever did that you performed in that was like a screen thing? Did you like do a student film, or like what was your first actual like project that you got cast for on screen?
Uh, so in the independent film market, there was a woman named Jill Wizoff. So I came out of acting school in 2005, and around 2006, I was submitting on Backstage, I think, and maybe even Actors Access. And this really great woman, Jill Wizoff, found me for a project called Creating Karma. It's an independent film. I think it might be on streaming service. So she came to me and she said, I think you could play this Jewish character. And he's a tour guide in my movie. And I was like, I didn't even know. I mean, I felt great about it that she would see me. And I was so excited because I'm like, I'm first generation Indian. I clearly look Indian, Middle Eastern, and so when she said, yeah, no, I think, and I said, I'm Indian. And she said, no, there's something about your personality. We did a quick audition in person, like no camera. And she's like, yeah, I think I like your energy for this character. And the name of that film is Creating Karma. And so that was the first project I did out of William Esper's studio on film, and I played the role. I really struggled a lot because I didn't know how to tell the story on camera, but she really, worked with me there at Prospect Park. We shot it. And after several takes, I had given her something that she could work with.
And when you booked this first job, again, I'm focusing. I have a series of quick questions about like the very beginning of your like film, TV career.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of actors are sort of at that place, and they're curious, like, what exactly did this actor do to kind of get to where they are? So, was that project a paid project or unpaid?
That was paid. Very low pay. Mm-hmm. To this day, I don't remember if that was see, what happens is, and I'm sure obviously a lot of actors know this, it might have been a union project, and I wasn't union at that point, so you become SAG eligible by doing that work. And then I think if you get two more projects like that, you have to join the union. So yeah. So that's probably what it was. It was probably like ultra low budget pay. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, maybe that's the significance of it also. I don't think the student films and the other things I had done up to that point, I didn't get paid for. I was just trying to build a reel.
Yeah.
Almost subconsciously. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like, I think I want to do film, and there are these universities here and there are student filmmakers. And so I was just kind of like putting it all together and then stumbled into Jill, and I was like, oh, okay, this is like a good role. And I was doing print, because there was like at that time in 2006, 2007, my ethnicity was getting more work, from Microsoft print ads or, like Computer Associates print ads. Like, and I was like, I could play that for a print ad.
Yeah.
And the agency I was with, they said, this is good, Nimo, you're booking work. We're opening a film TV group, like really small. And there's this guy named Chris, and he's going to run it. Are you interested? And I'm like, yeah, I'm interested. And Chris sent me out. See, I had no access to what was going on in the whole TV and film sort of legit world, mm-hmm. And like proper union projects that pay daily rate of, at that time, probably $650 a day. And I had no exposure, no understanding of that. And the first thing he sent me on, I booked. And that was for ABC TV, Life on Mars. It was, a television show in 2008. And so that was the first. I played the Maharishi. So I picked up the phone. I called my dad, who knows a lot about the Maharishi. And I said, I've been booked as the Maharishi. in a guest star role for ABC Life on Mars. So that was the first like real big thing for me.
Yeah. And that was a year or two after the first paid project that you booked that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And you had, prior to doing that paid project, that first paid project, you were doing free student projects and different things to try to build up your reel.
Yeah.
During that time, were you kind of figuring out anything along the lines of like what types of roles you most enjoyed playing and you were best at? Were you giving that any thought?
That's a great question. No, I just wanted to work and explore what that's like to work with. I was excited about like the collaboration. I thought, oh, I can't wait to work with the writer and develop this character and really work closely with the director. I mean, that was kind of like, it was all kind of embryonic. I was coming organically from my work with Terry in the class. And I'm like, oh, I want to find this director that really sees me and can see the potential in me. And so, I mean, in a way, it was kind of nice looking back. It was just an open canvas, an open palette. And I was, you know, willing and ready to partner with someone who wanted to work with me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that there's a lot of good things that I'm going to sort of like, you know, go over quickly for actors before we move into the next question. But like this whole idea of it is possible to get right into screen acting if you're wanting to do it without like spending years and years doing only stage, if that's not where your interest lies.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is really build up a reel as soon as possible by acting in as many different projects. And then you start submitting as much as you can using like Actors Access and all of that. And you'll eventually hit some sort of paid opportunity. And once that happens, it's allowing you start feeling more comfortable and confident in yourself. And then you'll start getting other, you know, opportunities coming up more and more. And do you, you said that you have a commercial agent. Do you have a legit agent as well?
Yeah, I have a legit agent and a manager. I will say one thing, just based on what you said, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Now that I have 12 years, I can look back, and there is a railroad track running side by side with you as you're doing all the things you just mentioned, which are brilliant. I mean, those things, I'm really lucky that I had the instincts to do the things in terms of the student projects and putting myself out there and connecting with people who want to submit me for legitimate work and using Actors Access and Backstage, all of that, great. What I didn't understand is when I was getting these opportunities, the railroad track running next to me, I will call it, is continued training, which I stopped doing.
Okay.
So what I ended up doing for a good 5 years is I started to wreck some of my casting director relationships. So, and I just say that honestly. So I was like, wow, you're sending me out. This is great. I booked a thing. I'm ready to go. You know, and then they would submit me and it was like, thank you very much. And what thank you very much meant was after the audition is, we may never call this guy in again because he's not that good, you know? And so that railroad track, what I really needed in hindsight was to keep jumping back on the train and trained and then jump off and keep working. And I didn't do that. And so I damaged a lot of casting. And I say it because if I had to do it over again, you know, do I have regrets? Yeah. I wrecked a lot of casting director relationships. So what happens with that is they give you a couple of opportunities and they respect your agent and they're like, yeah, we'll see this guy. He's a good ethnicity. He's a good type. Well, there's a role that could match up. And they'll give you a couple of opportunities to do in the room audition. And if you've misinterpreted the scene and you're bringing too much of your feelings to the role and you're not telling the story visually, they're not going to call you in anymore. And I've had casting directors that is 6-7 years I haven't been called in, and then all of a sudden they call me in. But that's a long gap, right?
Yeah.
And so I just caution people to not, especially if you decide you want to do this, and to not take a TV and film audition technique class and not to be in one sort of regularly is not serving yourself.
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you for, explaining that story, because it's so important. They're looking at you, and these casting directors really know what's good and what's
Yeah,
not. And if you're coming in from a standpoint of like, hey, I've got this experience and I've been doing this a while, and they're coming in expecting you to be awesome and you drop the ball,
yeah,
they're going to be like, what the hell? Like, why'd you just waste my time? I only had 20 slots to fill in the day, and I could have
it.
filled it with somebody who was worth my time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So that's really important. Thank you. Now, actually, I want to just ask you about your agent. So
Yeah,
a lot of actors, as they build up their reel and they build up their career and everything, they want to get an agent,
yes,
or
yeah.
or a manager. What would you say, like, before you had an agent, and now after having an agent? What's been like the biggest difference in terms of like your career, and what did you actually do? Like, what effort or steps did you take to help you get an agent?
Okay, great. So for me, it legitimizes and makes you more confident that somebody's taking you seriously. And if you have whatever notion you have about branding in business, it doesn't really matter. I mean, somebody's saying, oh, I see the talent and I see that you could fit on my roster and I want to work with, that inherently it's a very validating thing.
Mhm.
In terms of how that happened for me, uh, it's an interesting story. So I mentioned Actors Connection. That was an instrumental place for me in one-on-one studio. So I went in and read a monologue for a management company, Paula. And we had the meeting, and it was like the meeting part went really well. Yeah, I interview well, and my personality, and I may say the right things. I don't know, but it goes well. But then when it came to the monologue, I did it, and her first reaction was that was okay. And we were just in a room together, and she said, I don't have anyone like you on my roster. Would you be open to freelancing?
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah. So a couple of days later, she contacted me and she said, why don't you come in, we'll meet. We met. And then a couple of days later, they were submitting me for work. And shortly thereafter, I booked a guest star on Louis, the FX series. So that's how it happened for me. I utilized, some people would say at that time, like, why are you paying to play? Like, why are you paying to go meet a manager or meet a casting director? And I had no qualms about it. I just looked at it like, I'll spend the $35, the $60 to go meet someone that I don't have access to, and hopefully bring my best work or put my best foot forward, and that worked for me.
I think
That's how I met my manager.
that's awesome. I was going to say, I think that it's definitely something interesting to bring up. I've interviewed a lot of different actors, and a lot of them
Yeah.
do recommend that strategy of doing the pay-to-play auditions. And I would just say, as somebody who's looking at this from a business perspective, not having, being an actor myself, in general, when you're paying for something, first off, obviously do your research, like look up and be like, oh, this is a scam, or this is actually a legit agent who's coming here. You can easily research the names of people online.
Sure.
But like the second you pay for something, especially in the world of actors, most actors, there's so many, I would say, like everybody has this like dream, like, oh, I want to be a star or something. But then they're not actually willing to invest anything real into it, whether that's paying to learn training, like you're saying, and keep up to date with that, or paying to go and meet with an agent. The cool thing is it's 35, 40, sometimes even like 50 or $60. You pay that money, and yeah, it sounds like a lot, but really it's like the same amount that you might spend at a nice dinner or something, right? And that little bit of money there literally is going to separate you instantly from like 90% of the actors out there who are not willing to pay, and they're all going to the free events where you're never gonna like meet anybody, or if you are, there's just so much competition because it's free. So by paying the cost of going out to dinner one night, you're instantly ahead, and the agent is also going to take you more seriously because they're going to be like, this person invests in their career. It's like getting a professional headshot versus, you know, having a friend take a photo. You know, do you want the agent or the casting director to think you're invested in your career, or you're just kind of like, you know, playing around?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's a startup. It's a startup, and when I came from, that's exactly right. When I came from the business world, one thing I did learn that always stayed with me is the company I worked for. They were kind of a startup before I got there, and then things were taking off as a business. And I remember in a meeting once hearing the CEO say, you know, we're doing such and such this well, but in order to continue on this tact, we feel like reinvesting 17% of our revenues back into the company is necessary to continue the growth. And I that always stuck with me. I'm like, this is a major, I mean, it was a very small startup that eventually got momentum. So in that startup, they're putting all this money into it, right? There's a risk, so to speak. You know, they're getting their headshots and they're getting their, right? And they're doing all that and hiring employees. And somewhere they see that there's a market opportunity, and they decide, and he defined it. He said, you know, companies like ours are going to fail because they're not putting it back in some of the profits to continue. And it always stayed with me. I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. Like, why wouldn't I do that as an actor?
yeah, I mean, there's a saying in the film industry, because, you know, as a filmmaker background, they always used to say there's three different things that you can have. You can have quality, you can have time, you can have money, but you only get to pick two. You know, and
Yeah.
so quality, if you translate that over to actors, quality would be like a successful career or a good career, right?
Yeah.
And so you can either spend your money to save a lot of time and have a good career, or you can spend your time, a lot of time, and save your money and have a good career, or you could save your time and your money and not have a good career. You know, like that's the choice. And a lot of people are not either willing to put in like the time to figure things out or to invest into it, or they're not willing to put the money. You know, again, if you put both in, then you're going to move forward much faster.
Sure.
But the really good quote that I forget who it's by, but something about like people who are really, really successful have a different perspective on money, and they look at, you know, this saying is like, you can always get more money, but you can never get more time in your life. And so that's why you should be willing to sometimes spend money to move your career forward faster.
Well, and I would add to that's awesome, because the one thing I would add, which I'm experiencing right now, I mean, this whole thing, I feel, you know, fortunate that I have the skill of being able to sell.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that. I have questions about that too.
Yeah, it's kind of like my restaurant gig as an actor, and I had to frame it that way, because if I didn't frame it that way, for me, and this is different for everyone, if I didn't frame it that way, then really I would have a sales career and I would be a part-time actor. Or I could frame it as, I have an acting career and this is my restaurant job. It happens that I have this tremendously valuable skill that I can sell, and I'm just very fortunate. So I can work from home, and I can engage in contracts that I have the flexibility to go audition. You know, I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I can take the time off to go work on a commercial or film or television show. You know, and a lot of it is framing. And the other thing that I was going to add is it does involve taking risk, because this year itself, like, I lost my major sales contract, which had been going for 4 years. And it was going hand in hand with me kind of moving my career to the next level. And then in December, I lost the contract. And so in January, I had to figure out what to do, because it's kind of like the engine of because I don't make that time, at least I was not making enough as an actor to sustain being married and living in New York. So, but I decided not to panic. and say, okay, I got to find a full-time sales job so this ship doesn't fall in the water. So I said, well, maybe this is time to minimize how much I put into the sales and just take more risk on advancing my acting career and getting more training and just take, I thought it was intelligent risk, and it's kind of paid off because I've been able to maintain a small sales contract where, I just booked a very significant national commercial that, it's so, I think along the way, you're kind of jumping from one rock to the next over, and sometimes I've decided, I can jump from this stone to a very one that's very far away, and I fell in the water. or I was too scared to jump to a very close one, or there was one a little bit out of my distance and I went for it and I hit it, so I don't know.
You have to be willing to jump though at times,
Yeah.
Otherwise you're going to stay on the same rock.
Yeah.
I want to actually go into earning money to support your acting career. Because I think that, first off, your sales background, I have a couple of questions about that. But, a lot of actors, they might be hearing these sort of things that we're talking about and being like, yeah, but, I literally live like paycheck to paycheck and I can't afford to invest like 60 or whatever amount of money into agent things to get those opportunities. So first off, just in terms of your sales, how do you feel like having a background or at least an understanding of sales has helped you in your acting career?
It should help me more. But, one of the things that comes with acting, I think that didn't come with all, my corporate career is, although you're bringing yourself to everything you do, but here it's very personal. And I've had issues with entitlement. And with that issue, you become, you're not as good a negotiator because you don't stand up for yourself as much. You don't value yourself as much. So you can have all these skills, which I do, and I can negotiate very well on sales for other people. But when it comes to myself, this is a very humbling career. Mm-hmm. And so there could be enormous gaps between getting work. And when you get it, you're kind of like a little puppy in front of this massive machine, and you're willing to sacrifice a lot about yourself. So all these skills I have, they're fine and dandy, but really they need to meet your product or you and your sense of yourself and your feeling about yourself and your entitlement. If they don't meet, you can't leverage these skills you have because you'll forever be less than. You'll be giving the power to the people that want to hire you, may not want to hire you, have hired you. You won't be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And so I'm lucky to your question, Martin. I mean, I have awareness because I've been in the business world. So that's a good thing. Yeah. And I can understand kind of the context of what I'm in terms of being an actor and in a commercial. I know I'm dealing with the ad agency and the people, the client, and I see everything. I'm very aware of what my role and responsibility is. And luckily I have a manager and agent to negotiate for me, and I have good relationships. But, am I fully leveraging or making use of the sales skills I have? I think that's yet to be seen. I mean, I do feel it comes back to your entitlement of yourself, because in an interaction with anyone, whether you're collaborating with the director, talking to a writer, working with the producers, just representing yourself on the set or at the audition with the casting director, you are negotiating sometimes, and you're really bringing yourself, and you have to. There's an entitlement that comes with being in the room, owning the room in an audition. Mm-hmm. And being on equal level with the casting director, being on equal level with the director. And I've struggled with that a lot. where I didn't, I got to a point in my sales career where I can meet with my manager, I can meet with any client, I'd bring myself, and I felt very confident. And I'm still struggling a little bit with that as an actor because it's so personal.
I mean, I think that that's really cool that you're bringing that up, because I feel like a lot of actors and anybody, like freelancers, lots of people struggle with that feeling of like, I'm uncomfortable selling myself here. But if you kind of like, in my opinion, at least, if you sort of are able to shift your perspective on how you think about it, it makes it easier. And you start to look at like, I'm not doing this, say, for me, but if you figure out a way that you're doing this for them, and you're looking at yourself almost like, okay, I need to make sure that I get paid enough money, because if I don't, that means that I'm going to be doing a crappier job for them, and then they're going to lose out. So I have to represent in order to protect them from like themselves. Or in terms of like me wanting to get this job, it's not because I want this job. Like, as an actor, you have to have a complete belief in your own abilities. Like, you have to be like, I know that I'm a really good actor. Maybe I have some issues on like whether I deserve this job or not. But if you shift your perspective and you're not thinking like, I want this job for me, but this job, I'm the perfect actor for them. And if they hire someone else, the production is going to kind of be like losing out. I know that I'm going to bring my absolute best to this client of mine. So like, I feel like if you start to look at it from what's in it for them, then it also can kind of help you with that like feeling.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's super well said. I mean, it's all in the framing. There's a psychological warfare. Yeah, I feel you're going on with yourself constantly. I think every human, but I mean, in this, for me, in my life, there's more at war with myself and psychological, and it's all within me, and it doesn't really have to do with what's going on in this world of acting, this industry. And so, like you said, if you can look at it, that's really interesting. If you can look at it from their vantage point and wanting to somewhat take care of them and make sure this thing is balls out, then you're taking care of yourself too, hopefully, by saying, I am the right person and this is going to be great, but take care of me too.
Yeah, it's really, because that's the truth of it. I mean, not like, I feel like this is sort of like a life coaching session or something, like the way we were talking, but like when you think about it, like for instance, myself shooting headshots, I for years was sort of like undercharging. And the problem is that it kind of like made me sort of almost like resent the client. Not really, but it was like, if I did like a really low paid job, if someone's like, hey, can you do this for like a lower rate? And I was like, okay, fine, just because I wanted to book the job or something.
Right.
Then like throughout the shoot, I'm kind of like giving them slightly less. Maybe it's even just unconscious.
Yeah.
This person, they didn't pay me. They're kind of annoying.
Yep.
And you should really be out there looking to serve others as much as possible, and understand that in order to give your best service, you have to, first off, you don't want them hiring someone else unless legitimately, you believe that you're not the right actor for the part. Then you can't really sell yourself ethically. But if you believe that you're the right actor for the part, you have to understand that if they bring someone else on, that could potentially hurt the production because all the things that you have to offer. And B, if they're going to be paying you a lower rate than what you feel comfortable with, if you say yes and you don't fight for it, that you're kind of screwing them over because you're going to be resenting them during the project and you're not going to do as good work.
Yeah, that's great framing. I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's like a full package then of teeing up for success for the whole thing. Yeah, by taking care of yourself too, for sure.
I would like to, I know that we're kind of like wrapping up on time here.
Yeah.
So far, this conversation has been really, really cool. But I just was curious, I mean, from someone who has a background in sales, are there any general thoughts or tips that you would be happy to share with people who might come across this video? Like, you know, here's some things on how you should approach either auditions or, you know, negotiation, or just like thinking about your acting career. Any sort of like tips that you want to leave us with today?
Yeah, just
Take a minute to think. That's
yeah,
totally
yeah.
fine.
That's a great question. I mean, as far as the audition room, when you get the opportunity, bring yourself. You know, when you're preparing the scene, understand what's happening, the context of the scene, and bring yourself to it instead of. I think where I learned a lot is I was not bringing myself. I was kind of hiding behind these characters I had created. So from an audition, I mean, this goes at a very human level. I mean, they want to see you within the context of what they've asked you to come in and do. And, you know, actors hear this all the time, but it takes a lot of work to really trust. The commonality of what you just asked me is it's inherent trust in yourself, that you belong in front of this manager you're interviewing with, or agent, that you belong in the room with the casting director. It's a belief of no matter what, you know, and I would acknowledge and be aware of the vulnerabilities and the insecurities and being nervous. And I think it's important as artists, particularly, that you can touch those things, because it's happening now. I want to say the right thing. I want to answer your question. I'm also aware that I have a belief I can answer the question, but I also am like, wow, I kind of feel like I'm all over the place. I'm not sure, you know, so you're just having this entire experience, but, you know, with your 2 feet on the ground and just accepting all of that and accepting you've prepared, which is the hardest thing for us, is when we get the audition. I think this is the access point. This is the gateway to more and more belief in ourselves, and also other people to believe us in those moments. And that's really where we win jobs. I mean, that's where we get validation, is in that room. So I focus there. Is there selling in that? Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think to sell anything, you have to start with an acknowledgement of what you have, what you know, and what you may not. And that allows you to ask a question in the room that may help you, or ask a question of a manager or an agent in a meeting. I think where I struggled is I thought I had to be and know everything, and actually it's in the not knowing is the gems of being a good person, I think, because then you can be honest, you know, and that's something I'm working on every day, because I come from a place of wanting to know. You know, I want to be the guy that I know it. You know, I know the answers, and what I'm learning is that that's a misconception. Is like, be aware of what you don't know, you know, and be okay with that. You know, try to be comfortable with that. And in doing that, you are selling the truth of yourself. So
Awesome. Wow. This was an awesome interview.
oh, good.
I really appreciate your time. You
Thanks,
know,
Mark.
pretty much wrapping up here, but I'm going to be linking out so everybody can see more of your stuff. Hopefully
Great.
you're real. But you know, I really want to thank you on behalf of everybody.
Likewise.
Doing this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I love the interview. I appreciate it, Martin.
Awesome.